Before we get into the main topic of the video, I just want to apologize to anyone who's been a subscriber to this channel for a long time. I haven't been uploading any content almost 2 years now, mainly because I just haven't had any drive to make videos, and I don't want to put out crap for the sake of putting out crap just to have something up on it. I want to put out the best content available, maybe with a lot of speculation, which is what this video is about, but I just feel like I need to apologize to any long-lasting subscribers here, so I do, because I know you subscribe for content and I haven't been delivering it. So again, I just want to apologize. That being said, let's get into the main topic of the video. So, like I said at the start of this, I honestly believe EA has been dropping little hints here and there that they plan to fully revive the Medal of Honor franchise, and I'm going to discuss them, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is a logo change. Now you're probably thinking to myself, well, why is this important? Well, the reason a logo change is really important is because in order to invest in something like that, you have to convince shareholders it's a good idea for them to put their money in. EA answers to a lot of shareholders, and they have these shareholder meetings every couple months, and that's where they discuss plans moving forwards, new IPs. In fact, I think there's actually one at the end of January. Hopefully you actually get this video out in January, so it makes sense. But I do think there's one at the end of January. That aside, it's important to notice that shareholders, they have to be made confident that their money's going to be returned to them in a way that makes profit, or that it can just be a long-lasting project that they think, yeah, I'll lose it for a bit, but I'll make more. The goal for a shareholder is to make as much money as possible, and when it comes to something like a logo change, it needs to be for something that's active, something that they know that they're going to get their money's worth, okay? So that leads me into the Medal of Honor situation. So Medal of Honor Warfighter has actually changed its logo. Now this is really interesting because pretty much I'll give my story first. So a couple of days ago, I went on to replay the Medal of Honor Warfighter campaign because the multiplayer servers are shut down. So that's all you can really play on it. But what's interesting is, through the EA app, the EA Play app that is, I actually noticed that EA had changed the logo for Medal of Honor Warfighter. So on your screen right now, this is actually a screen capture I did of it. So this is the new logo that EA have attached to Medal of Honor Warfighter. Now what's really interesting is if you go through the EA Play app, you'll actually see that the old logo is still attached to some things, some DLC expansion packs. The old logo is still on, so it is, whereas the new logo has generally been moved onto a plethora of different things on that app, such as expansion packs, weapon shortcuts. It's all over it, so it is effectively, other than maybe one or two things. This is really interesting because the game, as I say, it's been dead for a long time. The game, even when it wasn't completely shut down on the servers, it was pretty much dead. You pretty much got the same group of players playing it every single day. Unlike maybe Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, which came out around a similar time period, which still have a pretty strong player base, so it is on all the platforms, PlayStation, PC, Xbox. It's still pretty much easy to get a match, and you can get a load of different matches with different people that you'll maybe not see again, maybe for a couple of weeks. That's just how active those games are, unlike Medal of Honor Warfighter, which, like I say, has been dead for a long time. And what adds to this as well is the fact that EA themselves shut down the servers for Medal of Honor Warfighter, the online servers. So realistically, unless you're going to buy a game for a campaign, there's no point in buying this game. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of point in buying it before if you were interested in multiplayer, because it had a small player base, so it did, on all the platforms. Which really makes it strange why EA would choose to lose out on resources, because it makes no logical sense to do it. If I'm an investor, okay, I'm going to use this example. If I'm an investor and I've invested X amount into EA, and I say to them one day, okay, in one day shareholder meetings, what's my money being used for? And someone at EA turns around and says, well, what we did was we put the money into redesigning a new logo for Medal of Honor Warfighter. My response, oh, okay, how many copies is that selling? EA, it's not selling a lot. Oh yeah, why is that? Because it's been dead for 10 years. We also turned off the online servers, so we did for it over a year ago. So realistically, it's only for a campaign purpose, and we're still charging people a bit of a pricey fee for just a campaign. So I can't understand if there's going to be a lot of people buying it. So yeah, if I'm a shareholder, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, are you right in the head, mate? Seriously, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would I waste money on this? Like, it's not going to make any money back. And just adding to this, I don't know if it's really expensive or if it's really cheap to do this, but at the end of the day, it's basically throwing money away for nothing, unless they've got plans in place that they've made these shareholders confident enough that they can use this money on this rebranding, because that's effectively what a logo change is. It's a rebranding at the end of the day. So if I'm a shareholder and they've pretty much thrown that saying at me, which we just discussed there, I'm not confident in this whatsoever. I'm saying I want my money back and I want out. Whereas if they've maybe made me feel convinced on something, then yeah, you see where I'm going with this. This is why it's really important to dive in on wee things like this, because it's really, really interesting as to why they would even do or consider doing something like this. Okay, so the next thing is, let's say for instance they have told the shareholders that they plan on doing something with Medal of Honor going forward, okay, behind the scenes. Who could potentially develop this game, okay? Let's look at all the studios EA have. DICE has got their hands full with Battlefield. Ripple Effect is handling something to do with Battlefield at the minute. No one really knows what it is, but they're handling it. Ridgeline Games, the new studio that was set up, is focusing on the Battlefield campaign. And Criterion have now been brought on to help the next Battlefield game. So who effectively could develop this Battlefield game? And my honest opinion is Respawn, and there's actually a number of reasons. One, Respawn actually developed the last Medal of Honor game, Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, which came out in 2020. Ironically, having a similar logo to the new Medal of Honor Warfighter logo. Just putting it out there. Similar, not the same. Similar, but both way different to the original Warfighter logo. Again, just putting it out there. But then you get people often saying, no, but they have their hands full, you know, with the sequel to Jedi Survivor, and then they're doing a Star Wars FPS game, and then they're doing a Star Wars strategy game, Apex Legends. They just have their hands full. Well, I thought so too, until I saw something really, really interesting. So every now and again, I'll look into some studios and see what they're doing, you know, through Wikipedia, the internet, whatever. And one thing that came up whenever I looked into Respawns was something really interesting. An untitled game being developed by Steve Facado. I have probably completely butchered that name. I apologize if anyone has the same name, or if that guy somewhere watched this video and I've just completely destroyed your name. Apologies for that. But you'll probably be saying to me, well, why is this even important? What's he got to do with anything? Well, here's something interesting about Steve. Steve Facado is best known, and I'm reading this by the way, so apologies if I sound a bit odd. Steve Facado is best known for being a lead designer on the Call of Duty series up until Modern Warfare 2. He then left in April 2010, where he went to join Respawn Entertainment, and was also a lead designer for Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2. Now, what's really interesting about all these games is that they're all first-person shooter games, okay? So he's designing an unknown game and has expertise in the first-person shooter market up until Titanfall 2, which came out a couple of years ago. So that was the last FPS game that he worked on when it came to Respawn. And now for some reason he's also a lead designer on an unknown game. That's interesting, okay? Now, there's a bit of a hiccup in this theory, and here's where it is, and I'll even acknowledge this. The team has actually been branded as a Skunkworks team. Now, what this means for anyone who doesn't actually know is this means that it's a smaller base team that's developing this. Now, on average, Skunkworks team usually means between 15 to 20 people. However, it's important to note that depending on how many employees a company already has, the number can vary. So a Skunkworks team for the likes of, you know, let's say a business with 40 people, it may be 10 to 15 people. For a company that might have over 100 people, it could be 20 to 25. In Respawn's case, which is known to have like 325 employees, I think, it could actually be gradually more. It could be around like 30 to 40 mark. That could just be the term they're using because they already have such a large team. So keep that in mind. It's really important to, you know, think like that. So it is in this situation, because skunk work, like I say, depending on the company, can mean really small or relatively small. It just depends on the overall employee size and what they consider a skunkworks team. So there's that. But it's really important to note that he has actually worked and expertise on first-person shooter games, okay? Okay, now adding to this belief that I think it could be Respawn is actually this. If we move all the way over to the platform known as X, formerly Twitter, I hate that name, but anyway. If we move over to that, Vince Zampella himself, the head of Respawn, actually has something really interesting on his bio. So his bio reads as follows. Head of Respawn, the home of Titanfall, Apex Legends, Jedi Fallen Order, and Medal of Honor. Now, the terms and the way he uses words is really important to note here, okay? And here's why. So obviously we know that Respawn developed the last Medal of Honor game, Above and Beyond, but that was a VR exclusive that was funded solely by Oculus and Meta for the, you know, Quest 2. But what's really interesting is he uses the term home of. Now, a lot of people may view the term as nothing really, but for me, I think it's a little bit of a hint. And here's why. Whenever someone uses the term home of, it implies that it lives there. So for him using the term Medal of Honor as the whole IP and not Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, or even if it's a situation where you can't have that many characters in his bio, he could have even said Medal of Honor A and B, you know, Medal of Honor Above and Beyond implying. Or he could have just went Above and Beyond, used that. But no, he uses the term Medal of Honor as a whole. He doesn't specify the one individual title like he does with the Star Wars game Jedi Fallen Order. It's actually just Medal of Honor. Whereas with Apex, he has Apex Legends, Titanfall, okay, franchises. Medal of Honor is also included in this list as a franchise, okay, implying that Respawn is now the home of it and will be making, well, this is my own choice of words, will be making more going forward potentially. Because like I said, it's just really odd that he uses the term home of with the Medal of Honor franchise, not just that one exclusive game that they did. So, you know, it could be on to something. And for me, this actually links up pretty well with the game that Steve Facundo is doing. So it is, because a guy who expertise in first-person shooter games is making an unannounced game. So he is with a smaller team within Respawn. Respawn made the last Medal of Honor game a VR game. Medal of Honor is a first-person shooter, so it is. You know, they claim to be the home of Medal of Honor. I'm just saying. Now, again, there's been other articles that have said apparently it's something new. Well, that's not really too much of a, of an issue really, because like I say, if you use the term new, that could be anything, especially, let's just say it is Medal of Honor and they use the term it's something new. Well, Medal of Honor's never been to Vietnam. Medal of Honor's never been to the future. Medal of Honor's never been to World War One, the Gulf War, the Cold War. They would all be classed as something new for that franchise. So realistically, if someone turns around and says, yeah, it's something new, I'm not actually too worried about that phrase, because like I say, it's only ever been to World War II in the modern setting. You could play with this, and if you, let's say it's Vietnam they choose to go for, well, that is technically something new. So I don't get too worried about the words like that, because again, like I say, Medal of Honor Vietnam would be classed as something new. I'm just saying, so there's that little element, there's a connection there with Respawn building, a logo change, and I think one of the bigger hints, and again, if you're a nerd when it comes to franchises like I am, this is something that I noticed straight away. But I'm going to bring up something to your attention, okay? So in Battlefield 2042, there's a weapon called the PP-29. Now, if we go into the camouflages for it and select a certain camouflage, this same camouflage has actually been used in Medal of Honor Warfighter. So you're actually going to see the two of them on your screen right now. Oh, look at that. They look so familiar, don't they? Now, again, Medal of Honor Warfighter came out over 10 years ago now. This game came out in 2021, which would have been a 9-year gap. Now, you may look at this and think, well, that's nothing to reuse stuff and assets, and I completely get that. But why it's been used around this time? Now, again, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what's the big deal about this? Well, what's interesting about this is that Battlefield 2042 came out in November of 2021. Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, the most recent Medal of Honor game, came out in December 2020. Less than a year apart. Now, what's interesting is that the last time this sort of thing happened was Medal of Honor Warfighter coming out in 2012 and Battlefield 4 coming out a year later, actually less than a year later. So could that be a subtle hint maybe from EA? Again, maybe I'm looking too much into this, but the fact is they've changed the logo, again, which takes some strong convincing. You have to really sell the idea to shareholders, so we don't know what they've said to these shareholders. So there's one, why would they waste their money? Secondly, they've reused an asset from that specific game that has got its logo changed in one of their most recent, actually their very recent big budget FPS game. Again, a little bit interesting. Respawn Entertainment, the guys who made the last Medal of Honor game, are actually developing an unknown an unknown game with a guy who specialises in first-person shooter games and has worked on some of the biggest games like Titanfall and Call of Duty. And we have Vincent Pell's subtle Twitter bio where he used the term Medal of Honor is home of Respawn Entertainment is the home of Medal of Honor. Not Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. Medal of Honor is an IP as the series. A lot of these things, if you ask me personally, I think they add up. And, if I was a betting man, or if I wanted to put it out in a percentage, I would say there's probably a good maybe 50% chance that the game that they're developing could be a Medal of Honor game. It could be. I could be wrong on this, and I probably am wrong. But I'm just looking at all the smoke, and I'm saying there's a fire somewhere, okay? There's no smoke without fire, and I am seeing so much of this stuff all over the place where I am that I think to myself, it has to be leading somewhere, okay? The biggest thing for me isn't so much the camouflage or the Twitter bio or anything really like that. The biggest sell for me is actually the fact that the logo for Medal of Honor Warfighter changed. And I just don't understand how you sell that to a bunch of shareholders who want to see a return on their investment, okay? Again, I don't know if it's really expensive to change a logo. I don't know if it's extremely cheap. But the point is, you have to convince shareholders this is a good idea. And they have to be convinced and on board with it, so to do. So that for me is the biggest takeaway from this. I don't understand why that has happened unless there's a strategic plan going forward. Unless they're going to do something, maybe a remaster. I don't know. Okay. But one of the other things I want to add to, and this isn't really adding or picking up from anything really, it's my own opinion. Battlefield for the longest time has been losing a lot of its identity. It's been going in a completely different direction, and this direction has been pretty much focused on and pushed by EA themselves. EA want more of a arcade-ish, faster-paced game sort of do, but they know that the core Battlefield audience doesn't really want to welcome that. Now, one of the interesting things about Medal of Honor, especially Medal of Honor Allied Assault, which was actually developed by Infinity Ward before they went on to become Infinity Ward, is it had a very similar identity to Call of Duty, a much smaller scaled game, and they even tried to do this in 2010's game and Warfighter. Now, both of those games, 2010 actually sold relatively well, so I don't really want to include it, but Warfighter didn't sell well, and the reason I think it didn't sell well is because of the market it was pushed out in. I've said this lots of times, especially on Twitter and stuff like that. It just didn't make sense for me to release that game in that market because it was so competitive. Now, again, if we look at the grand scheme of things, EA wants to push this idea of a faster paced game, and I don't think you can do it with Battlefield because they've actually had to go back into 2042 and effectively try and make it a new game while it was already made to the public, and it's pretty much been a mess. Whereas if they cater to both audiences, I actually think that there's a really good opportunity here for EA to do something, and I think EA are thinking that themselves. A lot of the ideas and stuff that they wanted to push with 2042, maybe they can't really push because of the core Battlefield audience and they aren't really welcoming to that. But there were still a lot of people who liked some of the stuff that they did do in 2042 and want to see it return. So maybe, just maybe, that they want to sort of try and implement that into a future Medal of Honor game and then keep Battlefield doing what Battlefield is known for. Again, maybe I'm wrong, could be wrong, very likely I'm wrong. But I see this as a really good potential move for EA and something that they could have maybe said to the shareholders to convince them, okay, this will work going forward. So maybe there's that. I'm going to do a part 2 to this video, guys, because there's something else I want to touch on, and I don't really want to make a 20-minute long video because a lot of people get fed up with that. But for the most part, I've been recurs. If you agree or disagree with any of my comments or statements, please feel free to leave them below. If you don't like the video, obviously, leave it at this. Like, I don't really mind. If you like the video, please like, subscribe. Other than that, have a nice day, and I will try and be more active in every video I do going forward because it's been a while since I've done videos, and, you know, I want to get back into it. But other than that, like I say, have a nice day, guys. Hopefully you had a good Christmas. Hopefully your New Year's kicked off well. And, yeah, peace.